Okay, Heather McPherson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, for people who may not be aware, and leadership contests are a bit, you're trying to introduce yourself to a national audience, and for people who don't know, you are the member of parliament for Edmund Strathcona, so maybe not familiar to many of our listeners here in Guelph, Ontario, or Wellington, Halton Hills North, since we're spread across two ridings now. But would you mind just taking a minute to talk a bit about yourself and how you came to federal politics?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, like you mentioned, I'm a member of parliament. I was elected in 2019, so that was the first election that I won. So, of course, there's been three elections since then. Um, I was elected when I was elected in 2019. I was actually the only non-conservative between Winnipeg and the Rocky Mountains. So this sort of dot of orange in the middle of a pretty big sea of blue in that election. Since then, yeah, I have been the member of parliament. I've also been the foreign affairs critic for the last 4 years. So folks may have known some of the work we've done on that file. As the world has been so challenging, I certainly took a bit of a leadership role in terms of dealing with the genocide in Palestine, the ongoing invasion, the full scale invasion in Ukraine, and of course now dealing with the mayhem that is coming at us from Donald Trump from south of the border. But I grew up in Edmonton. I'm a prairie girl. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a teacher, and I really didn't have a vision of being part of politics. That wasn't my career path. I'm a teacher. I did a lot of teaching in sub-Saharan Africa. I did a lot of work on sustainable development, human rights work, foreign affairs, that sort of thing. And then in 2014, the person who was sitting in my seat now, or that was sitting in my seat then, asked me if I would consider running, and I said no because women often do. I said no a few more times, and then at one point I thought I can't keep complaining about how things aren't going the way I want them to go. I can't keep saying that we need more women in politics, that we need more women at the table, and not put my name forward. So yeah, in 2018, I jumped in and we won the first election, and it's been ongoing.
We need more everybody in politics except maybe lawyers. But I digress.
Less
Let's
lawyers, less old white men. 100%.
Yes.
100%.
Well, let's start here, because you're in a unique position from some of your competitors in the NDP leadership race, where you have been in parliament this whole time. What, in your estimation, is the cause, or I guess, how did the NDP end up here where the party is right now? And from your observations, perhaps considering you were inside to watch the parliamentary power evaporate.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I've been in the house for the last 6 years, and so you do see how those dynamics change and what that all looks like from within. And I will say it's a complicated job, right? You're as an opposition member, you're trying to find those places where you can work with the government to get things for Canadians, push the government because, of course, on occasion, Liberals don't live up to the promises that they make Canadians unless they are pushed pretty hard from the New Democrats. And then, of course, opposing those things that you think are bad for Canadians that don't align with your values. And I think in this last Parliament, I'm really proud of some of the things that my colleagues and I were able to achieve. We were able to get the dental care program that 6 million Canadians have benefited from. Some real wins for workers in terms of anti-scab legislation, housing, all childcare, all of those things. But I think this election that we saw in the spring was really an election where Canadians were voting against something. Donald Trump became the question.
Mm.
We were told by the Liberals, you've got to vote for us. We're the only ones that can stop the Conservatives, and we didn't have the New Democrats didn't have a good response to that. We didn't have a good argument back for that. And of course, we told Canadians that Mark Carney was a corporate banker. He was going to govern like a corporate banker, and sure enough, he is governing like a corporate banker. But I think that was part of it. We needed to be a better progressive response and answer to what Canadians were looking for. And wave elections happen. Like there are things in our control and there are things out of our control. Mark Carney was the shiny new toy. He came in and that was kind of the place that timing is everything in politics, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. I think a lot of that leading up to that election, though, was and maybe this is some, dirty politics too, but you talk about the confidence and supply agreement, and there are a number of positive developments out of that, but at the same time, it tags, and Pierre Poilievre did his work well on this, tagged the liberal NDP government, and that was, I think, a framing that a lot of people took to heart. And I know in your campaign for leadership, a lot of it is about local power and collaboration. And I'm curious, just based on your experience, how much do you think? I mean, what's the delta? Like, you want to work collaboratively with people of other parties, but in elections, it's harder to say, well, elect me because, or elect this party because we can do X, Y, Z. And the response to that is, well, you were upholding this other party who was in power the whole time too. How do you establish, I guess, political independence and still be collaborative in this charged environment?
Yeah, and like I said, I was proud of some of the things that we accomplished, but I also I was not a fan of us staying in that agreement as long as we did, because I do feel like it took away our ability to be the opposition that we needed to be. And you're right, it tied us to a very unpopular Trudeau government. Um, Listen, there's a lot of balance in being an opposition member, because Canadians want to see their government and their opposition working for Canadians, for the benefit of Canadians. That's why we all should be there. I think many people have been, relatively disgusted with Pierre Poilievre's, attack politics that is nothing but objection, nothing but the yelling and screaming that things aren't the way they should be, in his opinion. Nobody likes that. That's not a collaborative Canadian way of doing politics. That said, I mean, I think there are ways that we can do that a little bit better, and I think there are ways that we collaborate with the provincial parties, for example. One of my priorities is to build up our relationship with the provincial NDP. We know the provincial NDP are very successful across the country, including in Ontario, where they are the official opposition. But I also think that there we have to give ourselves that space to keep our elbows up. We
Hmm.
know what Mark Carney is going to say during the next election, and we also know he's probably going to call this election within the next 9 months. And
Hmm.
he is going to say, you've got to vote for us, because we're the only ones that can stop the Conservatives. And what I'm going to say back is that that's not actually true. When I win in my riding, I beat Conservatives. And
Right.
there are a whole bunch of ridings across this country where folks voted Liberal, and they actually shut out an NDP candidate that could have won, and they ended up getting the Conservative. So it's actually New Democrats that will beat Conservatives. And frankly, I mean, like I said earlier, Mark Carney is governing like a Conservative. So what's the difference? What's the difference? You can vote for a Conservative or a Conservative,
Right.
or you can vote for a progressive option with the NDP.
I mean, I think know that what I think is the difference is tone, and Mark Carney is very much like sort of a Main Street conservative, the kind of idea of what progressive conservative used to be. But
Well, yeah, except like think about things like the Algoma Steel issue, where half a
sure.
billion dollars was given to bail out Algoma Steel, and nothing was tied to jobs. So yeah, sure, maybe he's got a nicer suit and he's got a friendlier smile, but you still end up with a bunch of folks that are out of work. You still end up with nobody fighting for workers' rights, for those progressive values I think Canadians believe in. I mean, I'm from Alberta. Danielle Smith is absolutely decimating our healthcare system, and if you don't think Doug Ford is sitting in the sidelines just watching to see what he can get away with, and instead of standing up for the Canada Health Act, which is the federal government's role, Mark Carney's been silent. So, you know, if you want someone to fight for healthcare or housing or all of these things that I think so many Canadians believe in, you need a strong Democratic Party.
And but to get there to go, you kind of have to break through this logjam of, I think, it is strategic voting. Pierre Poilievre says things that people may find
Mm.
objectionable, or he's too combative, and a lot of people are perhaps worried about him having a cozier relationship with Donald Trump. Although I'm not sure there's entirely any proof of that. I'm sure Donald Trump would find Pierre Poilievre kind of annoying, but
He could certainly get his top security clearance. That would go a long way to making us feel a little bit
well,
more
there's
comfortable.
that too. But I mean, the logjam is because Mark Carney has been very good at selling himself as like, I'm the guy. I'm like, whether you want business daddy or whether you want, someone who's just maybe not Pierre Poilievre. How does, the NDP not only like build back that support? And I would also point out too, traditionally, a lot of NDP support has come from the working class who have gone not to the liberals necessarily, but to the conservatives. So this is a war on two fronts, right?
Mhm. Well, and listen, we're diminished too. Like we've got to build back our party. We've got to build up our riding associations. We've got to make sure that we have candidates that are ready to go. I think that the first step for us can't be, going for the prime minister's residence. Like that's not our goal. Our goal right now is actually to build our party up so we're strong enough. We have party status again. Some of those fantastic members of parliament that did so much work get elected again. I'm thinking about the folks that, the fact that we don't have a member of parliament in Windsor,
Mm.
in Hamilton, in London, like that's got to be a priority as well. And it is a process, and part of it is talking to Canadians about, what does a progressive New Democratic Party look like? I love this about our party, but sometimes we try to solve all the problems. We've got to be talking about the things that matter to Canadians. And that is right now, that is housing, that is healthcare, that is cost of living, and that is jobs. Like those are the things that Canadians across the country are worried about. And those are the things that we've got to be connecting with people on. And we're the only ones that are going to do that work. I talked about healthcare already, but there's a national housing crisis in this country. And Mark Carney promised twice as much to be spent on dealing with housing in this country than he delivered in this fall budget. So
Mm.
when you look at those things, if you don't have a strong New Democratic Party that is pushing the Liberals to live up to the promises they made, then you end up with, not getting those things that Canadians need. Housing right now is in crisis. And the fact that the Prime Minister is not taking it seriously, he can do that because we don't have a strong enough New Democratic Party pushing him. But same with cost of living. I mean, do you think your groceries got cheaper when he introduced the voluntary code of conduct?
Hmm.
No, of course not. It didn't help anyone. Corporations don't work that way. They don't voluntarily give up their profits. There's real progressive steps that we need to take to make sure that groceries are more affordable. And I don't think this Liberal government's interested in doing that work. And they're not
Hmm.
going to unless we're there, unless the New Democrats are there. So yeah, he'll come back with an argument about this strategic voting, but let's be honest, it has always been better for Canadians when we are not a two-party system, when we have a strong NDP that is pushing the Liberals to deliver on those things. Otherwise, they don't do it. I mean, that's the history of our country, right?
Right. And the other part of this is coming from comes from like sort of the activist end and the people who would be involved in NDP politics because and this is a concern to me and I sort of see it in a lot of the activists here in Guelph, not necessarily people who are NDP, but just generally people who are involved in the community. There is a capacity issue. Like people are burnt out, they're tired. It's not just that, we're fighting the old crises, we're fighting new crises. And your campaign has a lot of it has been focused on, getting more local power, more local involvement. How does how do these two things square? Because you're asking more from people who are already giving a lot. Again, not necessarily to party politics, but just like, serving more meals to more people who are homeless or emergency response in this, very cold winter weather. There's not a lot of capacity for po politics when you're trying to do the work.
Yeah, and I mean, that's such a good question. Realistically, the world feels overwhelming for so many reasons. Whether it's what we're seeing happening in Minneapolis, with ICE, whether it's what we see happening in Gaza with the genocide in Palestine, like the fact that we're losing 1,000 jobs every single day, it feels like in Ontario for different sectors. Yeah, it's really overwhelming, and young people can't find work, and home ownership is like, all of these things. I understand how difficult it is right now. But I do think like part of our campaign is the idea of building this bigger table and welcoming more people in. And part of that is building that excitement that we can make a change. Like we actually can fix these things. This is not the housing crisis we are in is not happening in other like-minded countries. There are solutions. We know what they are. The fact that groceries are so much more expensive here than any other G7 country, we can fix those. Those things are our solutions. So I think it's giving people that hope, giving people the idea that it is not just this nonstop um, increase in need and difficulty in us meeting those the needs of people in our community, but there's actually solutions we can be working for, and why that's important that we do this work. And I think part of it is goes back to the question you asked earlier. How did we lose some of these folks?
Mm,
Well, we weren't connecting with members. We weren't talking to people. We weren't supporting the riding associations. We weren't talking to folks about how we could work together and giving them that hope. And I think that's what we've got to do. That's what rebuilding our party means. That's how we get activists engaged again, get them working on things. I get it. I mean, just this fall in Alberta, Danielle Smith attacked healthcare and workers' rights and trans kids and like all of these different things. And it does you start to be like almost numb to it because that's by design. They are
mm,
designing a system where they are flooding the zone so that we are always on our heels.
right.
But it doesn't have to be that way. And we just have to make sure that there is a path and there is hope and that we are engaging with people. I mean, I'll also push back a little bit. We had 2 1-hour sessions yesterday on rebuilding the NDP. Like this is inside baseball stuff. Like this is talking to people about the federal council, like the inside workings of our party.
Sure.
And we had hundreds of people from across the country that spent time on their Sundays so that they could come and talk about what it means to rebuild the NDP. Like there is some energy there to do this. There is a recognition that this needs to be done, and we just need to harness that.
All right. Well, let's imagine for a minute you wake up tomorrow and you're the prime minister and you have let's say a majority
There may
government.
be some steps between that, but
There may be some steps, but I mean, let's say by magic and wonder, Heather McPherson is prime minister. What are the first three things you do with
here's
that
two
power?
things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The first thing is declare a national housing emergency, ensure that we have mobilized the resources we need to ensure that every single Canadian has a home. Like it's homes first. Like it literally costs us money to not have people in homes. It is a bad thing for our economy when people don't have homes. First thing, do that. Second thing, fix our healthcare system. You know, making sure that the health transfer is not going to provinces that are using it to privatize, ensuring that we actually have the support for our healthcare system across this country. And that's complex. Like that's not going to happen on day one. I get it. Like there's a lot of work that has to go into that, but 100% we have to be working on supporting that. And then, one of the things that I think is really one of the policies that I put forward that I really like, that I'm really excited about, is our youth employment policy. And it is a policy that will make post-secondary education free, but it expands that so it's not just university, it's colleges, it's apprenticeships, and then there is a year-round apprenticeship program or internship program where young people can get jobs in the trades, in the green economy, in the care economy, in different sectors, supporting small and medium organizations and industries within our communities. All of that stuff could happen like that, and it would cost a fraction of what we are spending when we subsidize big business, especially oil and gas sector, when we invest 5% in defense spending. Even a fraction of that would pay for our young people to have a real head start, which is great for them, but it's also great for our Canadian economy. It's also great for how we build out our productivity in this country. Yeah, imagine that. Like, imagine what we could do. We could have a healthcare system that works. We could have housing for everyone, and we could have a real plan for young people in this country. I'm super
Hmm.
excited about it. Now I have to become prime minister.
Now you have to become prime minister, but to get that you have to be NDP leader first. And it just strikes me, if I can put on my pundit hat for a minute, there has been a lot of enthusiasm for one of your main competitors, Avi
Yeah.
Lewis, in the last couple of weeks. I mean, a lot can happen, and I guess we have 6 weeks left in the race. But how do you distinguish yourself with NDP members before March 29th?
I mean, listen, there's 5 candidates in this race, and they are all fantastic people. And, we're all progressive, we're all New Democrats. Um, I know how to win. Frankly, I'm a member of parliament. I can get going on day one. And we are a political party. I grew up as an activist. I love the activist side of our movement. But what I am running to do is elect more New Democrats. I know how to do that work. I have been doing that work. I've been door knocking and working with campaigns across this country. and it's not easy work. Like this is complicated and it's complex. I know how to do it. I think that's what differentiates myself. All five of us are going to say, we believe strongly in electoral reform. We believe strongly in a real plan that addresses the climate crisis that we are facing in this country. We're all going to talk about housing and transit and all of the things that New Democrats believe in because they are part of our policies and our values. But but we can yell into the abyss all we want.
Yeah.
Unless we can win seats, I don't. We can't get anything done. That's the goal here. We've got to be able to win, and I have a proven record of being able to win.
Is that a big enough consideration though? Because I mean, to go back to something you said about 15 minutes ago, maybe an election in 9 months. I mean, the next leader can't just have like great ideas. They have to be ready to run. And from your conversations, is that a consideration for who will be leader?
Well, I mean, I that'll be up to the members to decide, of
Yeah.
course. Just to put my own member hat on, I would be concerned about anyone who has not been able to win a seat in the past. That's
Mm-hmm.
a that's that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can't win in Vancouver, I don't know how you expect to win across the country. But that's me speaking as a member.
Right. Well, maybe to wrap up, I will give you an opportunity to tell our listeners where they can learn more about you and your platform and how they can, I guess engage with you if they're interested in learning more about some of your great ideas for the first day you're prime minister, whenever that is. So yeah, take it
I
away.
should
How can people learn more about you?
I should come on all the time. Like I love to be able to envision what this would all look like if we actually had a progressive government that was doing things for Canadians. Listen, you can go to heathermcpherson.ca. That's my website for this leadership campaign. Of course, I'm on all the social media channels, and you can always follow me there. But the platform pieces are on the website. You can take a look. Really proud of our climate plan. I'm really proud of our housing plan, the plan we have for rebuilding the NDP. Our jobs plan. There's some great stuff on there, so take a peek, and there'll be more coming as we go. Yeah, and it's a pretty big honor to get to run to lead this party, and it's been really interesting talking to folks across the country. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the 29th to see what the new Democratic members decide.
Have you had a chance to come to like Guelph or area in Ontario?
I've been through a whole bunch of the region,
Okay.
so I haven't been to Guelph proper, but I think we probably will be heading there in the next few weeks.
Okay, I like that tease. We will leave it there on a cliffhanger. But Heather McPherson, thank you so much for your time today. It's appreciated.
Yeah, thanks so much. Nice to talk to you.